And welcome to my bilingual channel and podcast, A New Wind, Un Vent Nouveau. My name is Marguerite and I am your host. This video and podcast I'm recording at the same time, so multitasking. So, on this video episode, I will be discussing the status of women in Africa. There is a first part and the part one. If you haven't seen the part one, part two might not make a lot of sense to you. I would strongly recommend that you pause right now, go and check out the first video on the status of women. So on that first part, I did explain the background of the how women, how the traditional African landscape were really favorable to women, and that we led in the past. We led, literally we ruled, and now I introduce how we slowly started to lose ground when the two religions entered Africa, the Christianity and Muslim. So on this part, I'm gonna go ahead and explain further and detail and break down how they overcome our traditional leadership in how it looks nowadays in Africa. Like only speaking about the status of women. So and so the absolute domination of the main in Africa came much later when Christianity and Muslim religion started to become the new norms. So, and I had made the point in the previous video that those two religions really advertise strong male figures and women were followers. And furthermore, education also has a lot to do with what is going on in Africa. When we've accepted a different religions than ours to guide us, we were clothes that didn't fit us or belong to us. We've lost our inner compass, and ever since, Africans have been struggling to anchor themselves in the European ways. And the disconnection is strong, it's astronomical, and because we were forced by centuries of slavery and colonization to abandon our traditions, we've never truthfully embraced their ways either. Yeah, either. So imagine going to church on Sundays and in Sunday on Sundays morning and in the afternoon celebrating your ancestor harvest rituals, or using traditional crafts to heal our people before you turn into God or into modern medicine. So we have been living hanging onto the same tradition that are forbidden in the Bible as being considered as worshiping different gods. So we're currently living our lives as amateurs, if I can say, because we're really struggling to find a way to empower back women after we've been stripped of our natural role. We cannot find a solution to our problems if we look outside. It has to come from the inside by adapting sorry, different ways of living, the European way. We've also adopted their problems. Imagine if you're being forced to speak a different language than yours, think and live in in different ways that really contradicts your customs and beliefs. And men were chosen by the colonial administration as leaders, and they were taught that women had no business with leadership, or we were just made to be wives and at the husband's disposal. So there is abundant literature and resources online showing evidence that Europe has always been a patriarchal society, and that women had to fight to get emancipation, the right to vote, and so on. I know a lot of women who have a similar upbringing than mine. So I was raised a little bit differently in the African cultural war zone. Literally, that's the word. It's a cultural war zone. I never felt the male domination, like I said, from my tribe. Women are strong minded, and we still are. So I never felt any male domination. My father is a philosopher, and my mother she's a very strong person. Just to say that. So, and all the essence of my education consisted of making me ready to question my society. And I saw modern discrimination and later on recognized it, but I didn't feel concerned. It was something that I used to contemplate, and I was just wondering, why did the women just don't fight back? Why? I didn't understand it. It was just for me, it was impossible for me to understand it. So, up until recently, I observed male domination and questioned it. And when I was in Senegal, for example, the male domination now, like the male domination was its highest point. I didn't blend in as a woman, but I somewhat fit in. When I was living in France, I didn't fit in at all. I couldn't even blend, regardless of the fact that women had a better status there. And now that I'm living in the state, I still don't fit in as a woman, and it has gotten worse. So I do not victim myself to boys or any society or system or country, but it is obvious, it really is obvious that I have less opportunity. I won't be indulged the same for the same mistakes with compared to a guy. And it doesn't matter within my own culture, society, or doesn't matter where I am. So we have to add to this very complex issue of womanhood, the burden of being black. I came up with a pyramid of the social rank. So visualize the male, that's the pyramid, I think. I hope it looks like a pyramid to you. It does to me. So visualize the pyramid, and you have on the very top here, you have the white male and their females. Then you have Eastern European male and their females. And then on the very bottom, you have male from Asia, from Africa, from the Middle East. And then on the very bottom, underneath the pyramid, actually, you have to go underneath, you would find black women and the other women, like from the Middle East, from Asia, etc. So that's the status, and it's real. It's something that I had experience in life, and it didn't choose to, but it was there, and I saw it, and I felt it. So we have, unfortunately, over the past several decades, I'm going to add numbers to this analysis. The World Bank has been an important thought leader, and there's a study. I'm going to read it. The study was called that the World Bank did was called "Investing in Women and Girl." And no, sorry, that's not a status. The study was called and engendering development through gender equality in rights, resources, and voice. So they had made the case that girls' education and other aspects of female empowerment was crucial to alleviate, to fight poverty. And again, in 2012, I believe, the same bank, the World Bank, has on his annual report, World Development Report, they also placed statistics and numbers and stated that it is critical that empowering women and girls is really critical to share prosperity. So on that report, they breaks ground on the challenges of empowerment, and they're saying that it's important that we voice women's up, and in many African regions, norms and traditionally actively constrains women nowadays actively constrain women's opportunity and girls and women's opportunity. Well, if norms don't change, if things don't evolve to allow a greater participation for women and girls, the cycle of poverty will never be broken. So the World Health Organization estimates that 35% of women worldwide experience intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence in their lifetime. That's a lot, 35%. That's a lot. A new World Bank report estimates that in some countries, the economic toll of violence against women exceeds a staggering 3% of the GDP. That's insane. That's very high, and it is well, for me it is extremely shocking that in the 21st century that the leading cause for death worldwide among girls aged 15 to 19 is complication related to pregnancy and childbirth. And in many cases, because and Africa is highly ranked here, girls girls are married too young. Their bodies are not ready to bear children, and that's the leading cause they die during childbirth. And Africa, unfortunately, does have one of the highest rate of child marriage, and also there's, I think it's India as well, but and those factors really limits the educational opportunity for the educational opportunity and economic independence for girls later in life. So out of this chaos, and these are just facts showing today how the situation the situation as of today, that women lost a lot. We lost a lot of status. We've moved on from being leaders. I'm not saying anything was perfect then, but the context was different, of course. But we moved from leaders to victims. And we just, Africa is really struggling to empowering Black women. So, and well, out of this chaos, we can say women are organized, are being organized, and they're trying to bend the curve, or at least to flatten the curve. And we're fighting to get better status, and within our societies, women's political participation in Africa and also continues to grow about 30% annually in government or local administrations on average. There are now statistics about violence against women versus estimates in the past. That this violence is being counted and quantified and legally pursued. So still we have a lot to do, and we have a lot to do to flatten the curve, like I said, and also to empower Black women. And going back to traditionally how women were strong, were leaders, and how nowadays it's completely different. I think what I learned from it, what I think we should be looking into is how can we have to look into our past and tradition and refer to it and see how did they do it before, how come women were that strong, and take things from our past, from our culture, versus copying every time the Europeans ways, the American ways, or the Arabic ways. So Africa need at this point its own identity. It's not something that we need to create. It exists. We just have to voice it up. We just have to accept it more. We just have to recognize it. We just have to use it, because all those things exist in our cultures. They're there. When we talk with elders, they tell us how they used to do things. Why don't we just do things the same way now, or adapt it, but just take more from our heritage and adapt it to our modern context. So that's about it. Well, thank you for making it this long. Stay tuned for more about Africa. Goodbye.